You're not bad with money, you're not lazy, you're not irresponsible, you're not doing anything dramatically wrong, and yet somehow, no matter how hard you work, no matter how many times you tell yourself, this month will be different. The number in your bank account barely moves. Sound familiar? Like got. Here's what nobody is telling you about that feeling. It's not a willpower problem. It's not an income problem. It's not even a spending problem. It's a threshold problem. See, there's a specific number, one single financial milestone that acts like an invisible wall between the people who slowly, quietly build real wealth and the people who spend their entire lives feeling like they're one bad month away from disaster. And the insane part, most people walk right past this number without ever realizing it existed. Some people hit it and immediately destroy it. Some people spend their whole lives just below it, close enough to almost feel it but never crossing it. And the people who do cross it and protect it, their entire financial life changes, not gradually, not slowly, over decades, almost immediately. Now, I know what you're thinking. Robert, is this another video about becoming a millionaire? Because I've seen those, they don't help. No, this isn't about $1 million. It's not about six figures either. The number I'm talking about is $20,000. And before you click off, I need you to hear this. Because what $20,000 does to your brain, your career, your decisions, and your entire relationship with money is something that most financial channels will never explain to you. Because it's not just about having $20,000 sitting in an account. It's about what crossing that line does to the way you think. It literally rewires how your brain processes every financial decision, every job offer, every opportunity, every risk for the rest of your life. And if you've never heard anyone explain why this specific number matters so much, you're about to. My name is Robert, and I spend an embarrassing amount of time thinking about money psychology, specifically why some people seem to build wealth almost effortlessly, while others grind for decades and end up in the exact same place they started. If you want to understand the real mechanics behind wealth building, not the fluffy motivational stuff, but the actual psychology and math, hit subscribe and drop a thumbs up if this video ends up shifting something for you. All right, let's get into it. Here's what nobody tells you about building wealth. It doesn't happen in a straight line. Most people imagine wealth building like climbing a staircase, like every dollar you save moves you one step higher. Slow, steady, predictable. And if that were true, saving your first $20,000 and your fifth $20,000 would feel basically the same. But that's not how it works at all. Wealth building is more like launching a rocket. The first few minutes after liftoff, that's the hardest part. The engines are roaring, you're burning the most fuel, and you're barely off the ground. It almost looks embarrassing from the outside. All that noise, all that energy, and you've barely moved. But then, somewhere around that $20,000 mark, something shifts. The rocket breaks through the atmosphere, and suddenly the same amount of fuel takes you 10 times farther than it did at ground level. That's compounding. And $20,000 is roughly where most people first feel it working. But here's what makes this really interesting. And this is the part I don't think enough people talk about. The $20,000 turning point isn't really about the math. The math is almost secondary. Or the real transformation, it happens inside your head. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called a scarcity mindset. And when you're living paycheck to paycheck, when your bank account is hovering somewhere between fine and please don't let anything go wrong this month, your brain is operating in full scarcity mode 24 hours a day. And here's what that actually means in real life. If you take the job offer that pays a little less than you wanted because you can't afford to wait for a better one. You stay in the apartment that's too small, too loud, too far, because moving costs money you don't have. You don't negotiate your salary because deep down, you're terrified that if you push too hard, they'll just find someone else and you'll be stuck. Every financial decision gets filtered through one single question. Can I survive this? Not, is this smart? Not, does this help me grow? Just, can I survive? And when your brain is stuck in survival mode, it literally cannot think about opportunity. It's like trying to plan a road trip while your car is on fire. The emergency consumes everything. Now, A study from the Harvard Kennedy School found that financial stress alone can reduce your cognitive function by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. 13. That's not a small dip. That's the difference between making clear strategic decisions and constantly reacting to whatever financial fire just started. But here's where $20,000 comes in. Research from Vanguard shows that having just $2,000 in emergency savings boosts your financial well being by 21%. $2,000, that's less than most people spend on an unexpected car repair. But when you push that cushion to somewhere around 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most Americans lands somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000, you get another massive psychological leap. Your brain finally stops scanning for threats, and it starts scanning for opportunities instead. That's not a metaphor. That's a literal neurological shift, and that is what $20,000 actually buys you. Okay, now let's talk about the math, because this is where it gets almost unfair. Let's say you're saving $1,000 a month and earning an 8% annual return on your investments. Pretty standard assumptions. Getting to your first $20,000 takes you about 19 months, a year and a half. That's 19 months of saying no to things, 19 months of being disciplined when everyone around you is spending, 19 months of staring at a number that barely seems to move. It's slow. It's frustrating. And honestly, most people quit somewhere in month 7 or 8 when it still feels like they're getting nowhere. But here's where it gets interesting. Your second $20,000, it doesn't take 19 months. It takes 17 months. Not because you started saving more, not because you got a raise or took on a second job. You did the exact same thing, but now you've got that first $20,000 working alongside you, generating its own returns, quietly adding to your total every single month. And your third $20,000 comes even faster than your fourth. And by the time you've got $400,000 invested, that same $20,000, the amount that took you nearly 2 years to save the first time, is now arriving every 5 months automatically, without you doing anything extra. You didn't change your behavior. You didn't find a secret investing strategy. You just let time and compound interest do what they always do. Reward the people who stay patient long enough to see it work. But here's the thing I haven't told you yet. All of that math, all of that compounding, it only works if you don't make one specific mistake. And this mistake is so common, so painfully predictable, that I see it happen almost every single time someone hits the $20,000 mark for the first time. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's talk about something that's even more powerful than the math. Think about what it actually takes to save $20,000 from zero. You had to track your spending. You had to say no, repeatedly, consistently, sometimes painfully. You had to watch your friends book trips, buy new cars, and upgrade their apartments, while you quietly moved money into savings instead. You had to prove to yourself over and over that you are someone who can delay gratification. And that is the most underrated financial skill on the planet. Because here's what actually happened when you saved that $20,000. You didn't just accumulate money, you became a different person. You became someone who controls money instead of someone money controls. And that identity shift follows you into every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Before $20,000, you agonize over the $4 coffee. You calculate whether you can afford slightly better groceries. Every small expense carries this low-level anxiety, like a background app running on your phone that drains the battery without you even noticing. After $20,000, you stop sweating the small stuff, not because you're careless, but because you've already proven you know how to handle the big stuff. You've got your priorities in order. A $4 coffee doesn't threaten your future anymore. Instead, you start focusing on the decisions that actually move the needle: where you live, what you drive, how much you invest, how you grow your income. The big levers, not the small ones, that shift in mental focus alone is worth tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. And then something else happens, something that wealthy people understand deeply, but most people never get to experience. You start seeing opportunities that were always there. You just couldn't access them before. Your friend mentions they're starting a small business and looking for an early investor. Before $20,000, you think, that sounds interesting, and you scroll on. Ideas after $20,000, you pull up a chair and ask questions. A rental property pops up in your area, priced below market because it needs some work. Before $20,000, you scroll past it and feel a vague sense of envy. After $20,000, you run the numbers. Your boss mentions a conference across the country that could seriously accelerate your career, but the company won't cover it. Before $20,000, you make excuses. After $20,000, you treat it like an investment and evaluate the ROI. This is what people mean when they say money goes to money. It's not some rigged system designed to keep regular people out. It's just that money creates options, and options create more opportunities to make money. The wealthy aren't playing a different game. They're just playing from a position where they can actually take swings. Okay, remember that mistake I mentioned earlier? Here it is. A lot of people hit $20,000, feel that psychological shift, and immediately treat it like a reward. I've been so disciplined. I deserve this. New car, expensive vacation, down payment on a house they can't really afford yet. And just like that, they're back at zero, back in survival mode, back to that low-level financial anxiety humming in the background every single day. Here's the reframe I want you to hold on to. That $20,000 is not a trophy. It's not a finish line. It's not evidence that you've arrived somewhere. It's a seed. And if you plant it correctly, if you let it sit, compound, and grow, that seed eventually becomes something that generates real money on its own. Money you didn't have to trade your time for. But if you spend at the moment, it feels like enough, you restart the rocket from ground level and burn all that fuel again. Don't do that. Now let me hit you with something that's going to sound almost too obvious once you hear it, but most people never actually stop to do this math. The average American spends somewhere between $600 and $800 every single month on their car. Payment, insurance, gas, maintenance, all of it. Over 40 years, that's close to $400,000 just to get from point A to point B. And here's the part that should make you genuinely uncomfortable. The moment you drive that new car off the lot, it drops 20% in value. You're not just spending money, you're actively destroying wealth in real time the second you pull out of the dealership. Now, take that same $600 a month, invest it instead. At an average 8% return over 40 years, you're looking at over $2 million. The car payment that was supposed to make you look successful, it was quietly making sure you'd never be free. This is what $20,000 teaches you to see. Not just the price tag on something, but the real cost, the opportunity cost, what that money could become if you made a different choice. And once you start seeing the world that way, once you can feel the weight of a bad financial decision before you make it, you can't really go back. Look, $20,000 won't make you rich overnight. It won't erase your debt or solve every financial problem you've got. It's not magic, but it is a turning point, a real one. It's the difference between your brain operating in fear and your brain operating in possibility, between reacting to your financial life and actually designing it, between money controlling you and you controlling money. And the beautiful thing, the moment you cross that threshold, even if it takes you 2 years of grinding to get there, everything that comes after it gets progressively easier, faster, more automatic. The first $20,000 is the hardest money you'll ever save. Every dollar after that, has a little bit of momentum behind it. So if you're sitting somewhere below that number right now, that's not a reason to feel behind. It's a reason to get obsessed with crossing the line, because on the other side of it, there's a version of you that checks their bank account on a Tuesday morning and just feels nothing. Not panic, not anxiety, just quiet confidence. And trust me, that feeling is worth every sacrifice it takes to get there. If this video gave you a new way of thinking about money, subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the next one.